Welcome to Focus with the Big Smith. My name is Leroy Smith. Today we'll be discussing education, and with me would be Miss Coretta MacDonald, who is a Member of Parliament and a national awardee. Miss MacDonald is also a children and women's advocate and has been the General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union since 2006. Welcome to the program, Miss MacDonald.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we're going to jump right into it. Virtual and Zoom classes are something new to the local education sector. Tell us exactly what roles are teachers expected to play as it relates to this new dispensation with virtual classes, Zoom classes.
Well, Big Smith, before I go there, let me say to you that this year, World Teachers Day, the theme for World Teachers Day, which was celebrated on October 5th, it says teachers taking the lead in crisis, reimagining the future. And that could not have been more apt at this time, because our teachers would have had to switch overnight into this remote mode of teaching. And so we have teachers who were not, quote unquote, technologically savvy. They had to make that switch. Because the thing is, teachers are committed to what they do. And in order to be able to engage their children, they had to start doing what they know to do. And so it's all a learning process for both the teachers and their students. But for those who are there, it's some bit of smooth flow. But like you're asking, teachers are now adapting to this new mode of teaching. And it's not easy. It's not easy because of the fact that, one, teachers have to deal with connectivity issues. The students, pupils, they have to deal with the connectivity issues. Teachers have got to deal with students who don't have the equipment, whether it's the gadget, if we want to say that, whether it's the phone or a tablet or a desktop, they have to deal with that. Teachers have to deal with instances of not having enough funding to ensure they have data on their phones. Students have that issue too, because parents have now got to be able to deal with, especially if you're a parent with 2 or 3 or 4 children at school age, you have to now devise ways and means of being able to have your children gainfully occupied during the class sessions. And so it's not easy for teachers to be able to teach during this period. But let me say to you, there has been no definite call from the Ministry of Education in terms of the directions in which teachers ought to go. Because we have not been able to, coming from the level of the Ministry of Education, be able to create a platform which teachers across the land, wherever you are and you can have connectivity, where they can log into and have their children logged into that and be able to teach. What we have coming though is that because of the switch teachers made overnight, teachers have devised means like Zoom, Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, and some other teachers have gone beyond that, where their schools have gone into exploring other means. They did crash courses, a week or so, a crash course within a week. And so they're using those kinds of modes to teach their children. Coupled with that, teachers have got to deal with parents being very unruly.
Which is going in now to the challenges.
The challenges, yes.
Okay.
So teachers have got to deal with very unruly parents. You have the children there on Zoom, a class of maybe 25, and there's one coming from one end, parents abusing out. Children coming into the classroom with, let's say, Leroy Smith. And then in the midst of the class, you get all kinds of fancy names.
Give us some of those names.
Sour balls, tight and sweet. And these are all distractions, just throwing the class off balance. Teachers would have had to deal with seeing parents walking half naked, just walking across half naked, and music being played in the background. And so these are some of the challenges that teachers face. But, like I said earlier, because teachers are committed to what they do, they have not allowed these challenges, even with the finances, to deter them from doing what they have to do.
Because of coronavirus, it is, I don't think it's any secret that contact sessions have been reduced between teachers and students. What bearing does that have on both the teacher and the student from the union's perspective?
All right. Because of what has happened, the coronavirus, let me say, is the boss right now. And whether it's a he or a she, they're making the decisions.
My friends said Corona is just a drink, so the responsible ones. But yeah.
Yeah, Corona is deciding what happens, and we just have to follow through. And so we were forced to close schools, all the schools. We were forced to close schools across this country on the 14th of March. Since then, there was very little contact with our children, except for those cases when we had our grade 6 pupils returning to school for just a short period, and our C6 students returning to schools for that short period, just to bring them up to par with the exams that they were preparing to write. But they faced, of course, we know face-to-face contact is the contact that would make the kind of impact that you want to have on your students. Because one of the other challenges that I did not mention is that of children logging into the class, but they're not actually there. So when the teacher is teaching and then you're saying, Leroy, you read now for me, and then you get no response coming from Leroy, but Leroy has been logged in, but Leroy is just absent. And so with that happening, it leaves you it leaves the scale rather unbalanced. So it's difficult now for you to be able to say, okay, Leroy is at this level, Sean is at this level, Marcia is at this level, because you're not sure when the child is there and when the child is not there. So you're busy teaching, and tomorrow when you return to the class, or maybe later in the afternoon when you return to the class, then you would have recognized, or if you would have given an assignment, then you were recognizing, oh, Leroy was not there all the time. And so it is going to hurt us. And we have to get accustomed to that until such time that we can return to classes. But what one of the things that the union is advocating is not a hurried return to schools, but we're asking that parents be even more responsible, and that parents make that kind of contact with our teachers via WhatsApp or Zoom, individually with their teachers, to find out, where is my child? Was my child in class yesterday, today? Is there any outstanding assignment? Is there any assignment that you're asking for? And those kinds of things. If we have parents responding like that, then it would make the class interaction even easier for the teachers, especially when they give assignments and going through the paces of their lessons.
Okay, coming back to the lighter side of my interview, I said just now that some people are saying Corona is just a drink. I should also let you know that we're outdoors today, and we've decided to come outdoors because of coronavirus, and we are exercising social distancing, hence this interview being conducted without the use of masks. General Secretary, you spoke of students logging in, but not some students, but not necessarily being in the classrooms per se. Have you had any reports of teachers who are taking advantage of this coronavirus pandemic to absent themselves from activities which are geared at engaging students?
Well, let me say to you, like I said earlier, because there was no definite pathway or directions coming from the Ministry of Education, and it is the teachers' initiative that teachers have been using to use my own data, to use my internet at home, to conduct classes, to engage my pupils. Teachers have been absent in themselves. And like everything else, it's not that I want to make excuses for teachers, but teachers are human beings. And so sometimes when you get the opportunity to slip out, you slip out. What I noticed, complaints that we've been having, is that teachers are putting work on the screen, they're setting work there on the screen, or they're sending work via WhatsApp or via Messenger, and asking students to complete this while they do something else, or they have a recording being done while you're busy doing something else. It's not an easy task for us to be able to monitor what both parties do, whether it's teachers or students being there at the time. But we have been encouraging our teachers. If you're timetabled, well, teachers have set their own timetables. There's no timetable that has been set. Teachers have set their own timetables. As a matter of fact, we have recognized students working between 11 and 3 in the mornings. Some students are saying that is good for them. That's the best time for them. It's better for them in the sense that they're able to interact better with their teacher. Their minds are set, and they're able to grasp the concepts. And so we've said to the Ministry of Education, if teachers are going to devise other means that are best suited for them, then we should allow that to flow. What I need to mention, though, is that the Ministry of Education, they have employed the use of the Learning Channel, and they are using the radio stations to have programs being run all day. And so you have the different grades there, and parents who don't have the gadgets, they can tune in on the television, and for those who have radios, they can tune in with their radios. We also have the Ministry of Education printing booklets for those students who are way out in the hinterland, booklets week by week, so they can also be engaged. What is absent there is the fact that while you as the parent will have the booklets to work with your children, there is not enough scope for weighing the balances, in the sense that there's no teacher to check the booklet, to mark the booklet, to tell you, well, okay, your child did this, or your child did that, or your child did that. But what we have found is that some teachers, again, being very, very creative and using their initiative, some teachers have been arranging with parents, as long as the school is within a certain range. Teachers have been arranging with their parents, and they're saying, look, when you would have completed book 1 for week 1, return those books to us. We will give you a new set, while we are going to mark those that you return to us, and we are going to make our comments there. So teachers have been trying different means of being able to engage their students and to give feedbacks to the parents, so that at least parents know where their children are and what they're doing.
I want to backtrack a bit to the question of teachers using the coronavirus or the question of if teachers are using the coronavirus to absent themselves from school. You did say there is no clear direction with respect to roles and responsibilities in this pandemic and so on. For teachers who might be guilty of the practice of absenting themselves from activities to engage children, as a union, do you guys find that as irresponsible from educators?
Well, we have always been saying that. As a matter of fact, let me say to you, while we were having face-to-face contact and we were having the physical school in operation, we found that there were teachers who, they're present at school, but especially in the secondary schools, they're present, but they're in the staff room when it's time for them to be in a classroom teaching. And those are some of the things we talk about all the time when we engage our teachers at their branch meetings. We have been saying to teachers, rights and responsibilities, they go hand in hand. You cannot only talk about your rights, but you're not willing to carry through with your responsibilities. And the same thing we are saying to our teachers now. Not because we have this pandemic, you're going to use that at every opportunity as the excuse for not engaging your students. And so I would want to use this forum at this time to say to our teachers, our children's future are in your hands. And regardless of what is happening, even if it's 1 hour per day, use that 1 hour to engage your children meaningfully, so that our nation's children will not be at a loss whenever we decide to return to the reopening of physical schools.
Was there any directive by the Guyana Teachers Union to teachers instructing them not to engage? I just need to get that clear. Was there at any point a directive by the union? And would the union ever at any stage instruct teachers not to engage students?
Well, the GTU, being a responsible organization, would never attempt to do that. and there has been no directive given to our teachers with regards to not engaging their students. As a matter of fact, we have been encouraging our teachers, we've been saying to them, regardless of whether the ministry offers some kind of assistance with regards to putting data in your phone or paying half of your internet bill, we are encouraging our teachers to continue to use the resources that they have at their reach to be able to meet the needs of their students. We've also had reports of teachers giving to students who are living within their street or just close by the street next door, as long as they can have access to their internet. Teachers have been issuing their passwords to students. Teachers have been opening their homes, the bottom flat of their homes, their yards, to students to come in and use their internet so that they can engage their teachers at different schools to be able to participate in lessons. And so the GTU will never at any point say to our teachers not to engage your students or your pupils during this period, whether you get subsistence or not.
Has there been any, General Secretary, has there been any attempts by the union to engage the major phone companies and probably e-networks to facilitate the process of access to data or internet for the purpose of these online classes and so on?
No, GTU has not done that, and we've not done that because we met with the Minister of Education, I think it was the third week in August. Might have been the third week in August. No, the second week in August, and that was just after she assumed the duties as Minister of Education. We met with her, and these were some of the suggestions that we shared at that meeting. The minister decided that after that meeting, she indicated to us that she would have been meeting GT&T and the Digicel, looking at these issues and these suggestions that we made, so that we wouldn't have it, well, it's the union and it's going to be this teacher or that teacher or the other teacher, but it would be done across the board, and they are going to work out how much the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Education / government would have to pay to these entities to offer the kind of assistance to teachers.
If you've just joined us, we're speaking with General Secretary of the GTU, Guyana Teachers Union, Ms. Coretta MacDonald, Member of Parliament and Children and Women's Advocate. Ms. MacDonald, before we went to the break, we were speaking about the engagement, making internet accessible to teachers for the purpose of Zoom classes and so on. But before I get to my other question, is the school system on the staff as it relates to teacher-student ratio based on your documents in the GTU?
Well, as we speak, there is a shortage of teachers. As a matter of fact, the last agreement, which is still in force now, speaks to class sizes. And so at the nursery level, where we used to have 20, we now have 15. So if we're having 15 to one teacher, 15 pupils to one teacher, then you understand we need other teachers in the nursery schools. The same thing in the primary schools. We have in the grades 1 and 2 we have 20, grades 3 and 4 we have 25, and then grades 5 and 6 it's 30, 35, and that goes through to secondary schools. But in the practical instruction centers we have 15, because it's different than just being in the classroom. And because of that, the class size ratio that we have now, there is need for additional teachers, and with COVID, there is need for additional space. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but I'm going to say it as we're on this. What we did during the month of August, the GTU, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, we set out as a team to visit schools across this country. And so in every area where there are schools, they were visited. And we visited those schools simply because we wanted to find out for ourselves whether we have enough washing drafts, and we're doing this in anticipation for the reopening of schools. So whether they have enough washing drafts, whether they have enough bins, whether they have enough the space that we're going to need for the children to sit, the boys, the students, and the pupils, because in primary schools we talk about pupils, in secondary schools we talk about students. So whether we have enough space there, how much more additional space we would need, whether we'll have a shift system, whether we'll do rotation. And so we wanted to get the information for ourselves. We did not want to have to send to this person or that person, and then when we decide to reopen schools, then we recognize, oh, this is shorting that, and we're, there's chaos. So we went out there and we got that information. And so that information is being compiled so that action can be taken whenever we decide to reopen school fully. We would have all these systems in place in terms of troughs, bins, pipes, running water, enough tanks, all of these things we've gone out there to look at. So we're moving a little fast, but we have to, because we are considering reopening school not for the rest of this year, but we have to reopen schools physically, and we have to put systems in place. We need to have a plan so that we can move when schools are reopened.
You said something that I would need some clarity on to inform my journalistic abilities and know it all. What is the difference between a pupil and a student? Like,
all right,
how do you?
Pupils in the Education Act, pupils, the age gives you the definition or the grouping. So pupils, nursery, primary, pupils. In secondary school, because the age, we talk about students.
Okay. You spoke earlier of the sizes of the classrooms and so on. That brings me to my next question. How capable are your teachers to be able to identify students who are not academically inclined, and once that is discerned, how is that addressed at the level of the school system based on what you might have been told?
All right, what we have happening in the primary schools, it's not so easy to discern that in the primary school. But in the secondary schools, when we get to at least third form, which is grade 9, when we get to grade 9, that's the time when students are now deciding on which stream they want to be in. And so you would know from that perspective that a student who is not so academically inclined wouldn't want to go into the science stream. That student would more be inclined to go into the tech stream. And I'm not saying that students who are academically inclined don't go into tech stream, but a student who is always there with the book and the math and everything, that student would be more inclined to go into the science stream or go into the stream, the business stream. But you'll find in the tech stream and the art stream, you'll find those students who would prefer to be a little more, I don't want to say a little more relaxed, but if the amount of work that the workload there would not be as much as you have to do in the other streams.
So what are the SOPs when you are able to identify and discern that? What is the next step a teacher should take when they identify these things in order to be able to harness, let's say, the fact that I want to get into mechanics, or I want to get into technical drawing or construction or so? Like, how does it work?
Good. So those are the streams. That's why we have streaming, and so the streams would so dictate. Now the teachers who are responsible for those streams, those classes there, where you have the streams, the science stream, we are going to have the teacher who was mastered in math, bio, chem, physics, and so on, and we'll have the English and so on. The teachers for the technical stream would be building tech, electrical engineering, and technical drawing, and so on. So those are the teachers that are going to be used to guide the students in the field that they want to go into. So if the child decides that, hey, I want to be a mechanic, then we have that teacher in that stream who would be guiding. They'll have the lessons there, and then they'll have exchange visits where they would be able to guide those children, maybe take them to a visit to GITC or GTI, or have a mechanic shop that is somewhere close by next to the school where they can take those children and have them, view parts, observe parts of a vehicle, look at how you start a car, the braking system, the tires, how you remove a tire, how you open the bonnet, how you look at what's happening, where's the radiator, and those kinds of things. So we have the teachers who are geared there. When the child would have, but the secondary school would not be able to give the child the full complement that they need. Hence the need for the children to go off to the Government Technical Institute or GTI or the New York, whichever one of the technical institute that they happen to live within that educational district. They venture off there. After doing that, then they'll move on to those who want to move off to university. They move off to university. But let's return to being able to discern. We might have children in our schools moving from the primary school, getting into secondary school, and some of them could hardly read, they could hardly write, and they would not have mastered the art in the primary school before getting into the secondary school. But because of their age, you have to put them into the secondary school because they would have written their grade 6 exams and they were placed into secondary schools. And so in the secondary school system we have a 5 years program and the 6 years program. So those who fall into the 6 years program, that 6-year program is geared to be able to bring the child up to speed so that he or she, when they get into the year 1 of actually being in secondary school, is when they are going to now shoot off, or we expect them to shoot off to be able to master the 5-year plan that the secondary school provides for them.
Before I go to my next question, as we got into the whole issue of the ability in secondary school and so on. Several years ago, there was the No Child Left Behind policy. It was a big bacchanal, for want of a better term.
That's true.
Does the union still believe it was a disastrous policy?
Yes, we do, and we still hold that view because let me flip right now, and to bring into the play Mr. Thomas, head teacher from the
I think it was Linden.
It was teacher from Linden. I can't remember. Mackenzie? No, not Mackenzie High. New Silver City Secondary. I think it might have been one of the schools in Linden. But Mr. Thomas held out to what he believed in. And he said, I am the head teacher for this school, and I will not be allowing students who cannot master a grade 7 class to be promoted to grade 8. If the child cannot master that class, the child will remain right there. Now, when persons heard that, some persons thought that that was very harsh. But if I'm to rewind, when I attended school, and I'm not so sure how old are you, Leroy?
I'm 35.
But the thing is, when I attended school, if you fail, you fail. You got to remain in the same class. Or what was happening at some times is that there was a little flexing where you were promoted to the class on probation. But most times, back in my days, when you fail, and you have to repeat the class. And it made that child an even better child. But we got into this whole span of things where we were talking about humiliating the child and this and that and all kinds of cases we became and we tried to prove that if we have the child remain in the class, how demoralizing it would be for the child. But we have not taken into consideration the fact that a child is not being able to spell cat, for the want of a better word, or a better example at this time. A child is not being able to spell cat, but you want to now put the child to spell school, or minibus, or bicycle. If the child can't master a 3-letter word, how are you going to get that child to spell a word that has 7 letters? And so we're saying, when we're making decisions, we have to look at every single aspect. and the kind of effects it would have. Because you know what happened when we had that same period of No Child Left Behind? Many children left schools because you move them from one grade, especially, and it happened more in the secondary schools. You put them over in another grade, and it's not only frustration for the child, but it was frustration for the teacher and the frustration for the parents. And so many children, they were dressed to come to school, but on their way to school, they found other things to do. And so if you remember what was happening during that time, we found lots and lots of our boys in the gambling shops. Those shops where they play all the games, we found lots and lots of them in there because they couldn't cope with the work at another level, and so they just went to find other things that would occupy their time. But I'm thinking now that much thought would have been given into that, and so while we are not going to have the child not being left behind, we are going to have provisions now where we are going to have, if I can say, parallel classes. So you work with the children who are not so inclined. You work with them at their own pace. Now, this would involve quite a lot of changes within the education system. And so even at the exams division, we're going to now have to be able to cater for these children so that we are going to have no child indeed left behind.
Is the union, do you believe, you've been General Secretary since 2006.
Lots and lots of years.
Do you believe this union is an effective union and it represents its teachers adequately?
Well, if I can simply say, let me say this. If you look at the benefits we offer to our teachers, it outweighs what every single other union in this country offers to their members. And I don't want to tell you how much is our membership dues. Very, very minimal costs. But the kinds of representation and the kinds of benefits we offer to our members, it cannot be compared with the kind of union dues that they pay. And so I would want to rate the GTU at 85. If I were to put on a scale of 10 to 100, 85%.
What are some of the benefits?
At GTU, we have legal benefits that we offer to our teachers. We have death benefits that we offer to our teachers. We offer bursaries to teachers and their students. We offer scholarship to our teachers. We offer counseling services to our teachers. And there are many, many more benefits that we offer to our teachers.
Okay.
Outside of better working conditions and increased salaries, there's so many other benefits that we offer to our teachers.
General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union for all these years, you're now a member of Parliament, which gives you a seat in the legislative arm of government. How does that benefit your teachers? What do you bring? What added benefits will that bring for teachers in this country?
Well, let me say to you, Leroy, that I'm not only General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union, but I'm also President of the Guyana Trades Union Congress, which says that I represent not only teachers, but workers on a different scale or on every sector or most of the sectors. And with that being said, the scope of my scope of representation is even wider. And being in Parliament as a member of the National Assembly, it offers added weight to the askings that we have been making for our workers across this country. Where here is it, you don't have just a general secretary or a president, but you have a worker in itself. Because at the end of the day, I'm a teacher by profession. And so whatever increases the teachers get, that's the same increase I get. The issues that we face in schools, the issues that teachers are facing in schools, no shortage of water, not enough textbooks, not enough class space, not enough lighting, not enough this, not enough that. Those are the things that I experience too. So when I speak I speak from a platform of knowing what I say. It's not anything hearsay or anybody sending anything to me. I speak because I am there. I understand what it's like. So with me being in Parliament, the representation is going to be coming from the heart and not what anybody is telling me to say. And so with that being, with me being there, I think it offers a better scope for our workers to be able to live, to be able to receive better packages and better conditions of work.
How optimistic are you that you'll be able to, or the Ghana Teachers Union will be able to have a good working relationship with the Education Minister, who is on the other side of the legislative arm in Parliament? I know you would have worked together before, because this is her second stint at the Education Ministry. How optimistic is the union?
All right, let me say to you, Coretta MacDonald, Priya Manik Chand, that relationship, that friendship goes way beyond politics. Minister of Education and the General Secretary. That friendship has been there from ever of old. Yes, we stand on different sides of the table, but the fact is the issues there has nothing to do with whether you're PPP or whether you're coalition. The issues are basic issues. And education, let me say education, there is no crossroads when it comes to dealing with education. That's a straight business. If we don't educate, then we have to build more prison cells. Simple as that. And so I don't see quite a lot of difficulty with, and when we engage the minister in having the minister and her team agreeing with proposals that we submit. What we do foresee is that some of the askings or well, let me say it, some of the askings might not be possible at the time, and the amount, if we were to rate it like that, the amounts might not be possible. If the union is asking for maybe a 15% in salary increases, you might very well have the government saying, or the Minister of Education saying, well, the government can't offer that. All we can do is offer 5%. That would call for a bit of negotiation and tough negotiating too. To have moved, because you know we were accustomed to having 5 and 3 and 5%, and then we moved from that to having 8 and 10 and 12%. So to go to 5%, that would be maybe drinking sleeping pills, and we're not going to drink sleeping pills. So those kinds of things are where we're going to have tough battles. But outside of that, we see education, and I want to take the liberty to speak for the Minister of Education and the Ministry of Education. We see education as being pivotal in the sense of the development of our country. More so, since we are, and maybe we are already being tagged as the new Dubai of the Caribbean, we have to set our education train in a different direction. More so since we have oil on the bandwagon now, we have got to be able to educate our students and to align our school systems and the programs that we're offering in our school systems to so fit that channel so that we can be equipped to deal with what is happening there in the oil field or in the oil and natural gas fields. And so I like I said, I do foresee us having some bits of difficulties, but I don't see those difficulties as being very major, since education is pivotal.
A more direct question. You see yourself as supporting motions that might be tabled in a National Assembly in her name, and vice versa? You see that?
Well, let me say to you, anything that comes with education, anything that comes with labor, anything that deals with equal rights and fairness, those are going to be supported. And they're going to be fully supported. When we talk about our people, we must talk about not only sugar workers, but we must talk about teachers, we must talk about nurses, we must talk about public servants, we must talk about the joint services. anything along that line which will bring benefit to workers equally, they're going to be fully supported. But if you're going to talk about one sector of worker and you want to bring bills to the National Assembly to support one sector of workers while other workers are left behind, obviously those are not going to be supported. With education, with the education system, if we're going to bring bills that talks about education reform and changing some of the laws that we have within the education and bringing them up to par with where we are now in this changing world, then those are going to be fully accepted and voted for. But if we are going to, again, if we are going to have segments and we're going to have discrimination and we're going to only highlight one set of workers, then we definitely are going to have issues.
Final question for this program. There are some concerns which were raised as it relates to the grades our students and some students in other Caribbean countries would have received from writing the CSEC exams. What is the union's position on this?
When those were brought to our attention, the first thing we did, Minister of Education and I, we made a statement on it. It wasn't a joint statement, but we both spoke on the issue of CXC and the manner in which students were graded. The thing is, this pandemic has caused panic throughout the country, throughout the world. And our teachers and our students were under extreme pressure to, one, having to complete work that was supposed to be completed before schools were forcefully closed. And so they had to use all kinds of means to ensure that the work was completed so that the students can be prepared for their exams. Two, students and teachers risked their lives to go out there 2 weeks before the exams to ensure that they are prepared. Then they turned up on the exams to write those exams using masks, while we would have had students who were suffering from asthma and all kinds of related illnesses. They had to be using those masks, which students were not accustomed to be wearing. And they had to wear these masks for an entire period. Now, with all of those sacrifices being made, and with the financial sacrifices that parents made to ensure that their students, their children were prepared to write these exams. And at the end of the day, after you would have written those exams, when you see those results returning to you, you're seeing you have a grade 3 in this, and a grade something in that, and a grade something in that. And it's quite disgusting when you would have had a child scoring A's all the time. And then at the end of it, you're seeing a result that gives you a score that says C. Those are things that we can't accept. And because we couldn't accept that, we asked CXC. If you remember what I said then, I said, CXC, you need to fix your business. If you don't fix your business, we're going to fix it for you. And we would have asked CSEC, the entire board, to review what was done. And while we were making that call, we recognized that our counterparts in other parts of the Caribbean were making the same calls because they too were dissatisfied with the results that were given to students. What I noticed is that some review was done, and the parents as well as teachers and the students, they are pleased with what they would have gained from the reviews that were done. As a matter of fact, I should have said this first, but the heartbreak was so much and the disappointment was so much that 2 of our students attempted suicide. And we had to get that to the hearing of the board of directors of CXC CSEC in Barbados to let them understand that our students worked extremely hard. And so at the end of that journey, they deserve to get better than they would have gotten. In between that though, we have found out that there were some hitches here and there where, persons who were supposed to be submitting grades, the grades were not submitted on time. CSEC felt that scores that were given for students with regards to their SBAs, students were given more than they should have gotten. And we're saying, if you're going to do those kinds of down marking, if there's a word like down marking, if you're going to be doing that, then CSEC at this time, since we were forced to deal with this whole COVID pandemic, we did recommend to CXC not to have the exams at this time. Let's push the exams a later down in the year, which CXC could have done. Let's push the exams a later in the year, which would give our teachers and our students some more time to be able to complete all that they did not get to complete, to ensure that proper marking, like CSEC were explaining to us that proper marking was not done, and so they found high scores and all kinds of things. But we were saying, if you had given us enough time, then all of these hitches would have been cleared, and we would have had a smooth part. But CXC held on to the fact that they were going to have the exams during this period, and as a result of that, we found what we would have found out there in terms of the results that were given. But we're happy that CXC did listen, and they've bent, and the reviews were done. We are waiting the completion of the entire reviewing process, and then we are going to make a final decision or a final statement on what is the outcome and with regards to the schools that were affected. And so it's not only Queen's College and the Bishop's High, but several schools across this country were affected by the results that came from CXC.
Ms. McDonald, thank you very much for having a conversation with us today. You're the first in our series of programs here on the Big Smith News Watch, where we'll be engaging other professionals and members of our society here in Guyana. This was Focus with the Big Smith. My name is Leroy Smith. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you here again shortly.